two leaders who I think have found one of these moments in history where there are two personalities in leadership positions who can really get things done.
Hello and welcome to Independence Avenue Media. I'm Meurmishvili and I have the pleasure of speaking with Ambassador Philip Reeker today. We'll be talking about South Caucasus, about Armenia, Azerbaijan peace negotiations, as well as America's interests in this region. Ambassador Reeker is a former Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasia Affairs. He's also a former senior advisor on the Caucasus negotiations. Ambassador Reeker, thank you very much for finding the time to talk to us today. I really appreciate you being here today.
Pleasure to be with you.
Let's start with one of the biggest news that came out about and from the Caucasus this week, which is basically both sides, Armenia and Azerbaijan, confirming that United States of America has offered some sort of engagement and involvement in securing, operating, taking under a 100-year lease, so-called Zangezur Corridor. Tell us more about that. What is the corridor and what's happening? What does this news mean?
Well, as you know, Azerbaijan, of course, includes in its overall geography as an independent and sovereign country, a so-called exclave, the Nakhchivan exclave, which is separated from the rest of Azerbaijan by a portion of Armenia. At its narrowest, it's around 30 kilometers across. And they have sought, that is Azerbaijan, connection between those two parts. That's always been an important, agreed upon thing to discuss between Armenia and Azerbaijan as they pursue peace, is how to improve transportation and communication connections. And so this corridor, whether it's rail or road or both, has been, first of all, an important part of the negotiations, but also a sticking point. Armenia is concerned about giving up any sort of sovereignty over its territory for this corridor, road or rail, to cross it. Azerbaijan has been concerned about security if it doesn't have control. And certainly when the United States has been involved, including when I was part of discussions, we kept trying to remind both parties that there were options, ways to achieve this, using technology, using third parties, international groups, whether private or other countries or other international organizations, to help facilitate creation of this kind of corridor. So I'm pleased to hear that there seems to be some ideas floating out there, that the presidents or the leaders of the two countries, President Aliyev of Azerbaijan, Prime Minister Pashinyan of Armenia, are meeting in person. And great to see that the United States continues to offer its good offices, its diplomacy and support to help them reach this peace agreement, something which they have fundamentally agreed to in draft as they announced in March.
Do you think it's a realistic concept for the U.S. to lease this corridor for 100 years?
Well, I think there could be all kinds of formulas and ways about doing this, whether it's the U.S. or a private element that's involved. The key here is about sovereignty. Armenia doesn't want to give up sovereignty over its territory. Azerbaijan wants to have that connection between two parts of its country and have that with security. And so by using international, whether other countries or private means, I think they can find a solution to do that. And what's been talked about in the press, certainly I don't know the details, is one way to look at it. And it gives both sides something to work with and pursue through their own conversations and with the support of others in this diplomatic process.
And would you describe this, or how would you describe this project, as a strictly commercial, Azerbaijan wanting to have access to its own territory of Nakhchivan, Armenia trying to protect its sovereignty, and on top of that, just ensuring some sort of connectivity, basically, in the region? Or do you think that it's some sort of geopolitical pivot in the Caucasus region? Where do you put this? Is it strictly commercial, or are we seeing something much larger than just commercial interests?
Well, clearly, it's more than commercial. It's about countries fulfilling their goals in terms of, for Azerbaijan, connecting two parts of their country. This is a piece of history and geography, a legacy of not just the Soviet era, but times since, and trying to find practical solutions to do that. So there's a commercial aspect. You want to have trade and openness. Armenia has pursued that as well in terms of their idea of so-called crossroads of peace, to open up more borders with all of their neighbors, including Azerbaijan, to promote trade, to promote engagement among people. You need security to do that. You need a level of confidence. And let's face it, this is a region that has been racked by war, two countries who have extremely bitter histories together, particularly in recent years, two wars fought in the past 40 years, brutal wars. Now they have a formula for peace, and they have to work out some of these details. And I think we've got two leaders that are able to do that. And with the support of the international community and creative thinking on the part of lawyers and technology, for that matter, in terms of how to control and secure borders and customs regimes, I think they can really find a way forward on this. So I'm quite hopeful.
Do you think this is a sort of prerequisite for signing the peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia? This has been sort of hanging over the peace deal for a while now.
No, this has been a key issue going back many, many years. And when I was involved in the talks, still at the State Department and trying to bring the two sides together, this was always an issue that both sides recognized they needed to address. They obviously had different concerns, as we've discussed, and different approaches. But the whole point of opening transport and communications, which was a fundamental principle of their engagement toward a peace agreement, and then a commitment that they took as long ago as almost 3 years ago, when the two sides met here in Washington, facilitated by the State Department under the auspices of the Secretary of State himself, that they would remain engaged to discuss how they could establish a route to connect Azerbaijan proper with Nakhchivan, and reciprocal access for Armenia through Azerbaijan in terms of opening border points so that people could move more freely there.
So let's see what happens. Things are moving very fast, both in terms of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Aliyev and Pashinyan meeting and interacting, engaging with each other. Even if it's limited, still there is some sort of, you can see this dynamics from some of the videos that we've seen. But things are also moving very fast as it comes to Russia, especially Azerbaijan-Russia relations, and of course Armenia-Russia relations. What would be your assessment of Russia's role? Is it diminishing in the South Caucasus as we are seeing the situation unfold, or this resolution being tangible at this point between Armenia and Azerbaijan? Or do you think Russia is sort of observing and not fully retreating just yet?
Well, let's remember Russia is very much distracted, of course, by Putin's war against Ukraine, which takes tremendous amounts of their resources and is the top priority for him. I think in the South Caucasus, you've seen a long history of Russian interference and even in more recent years, a sort of malign influence that both Azerbaijan and Armenia, not to mention Georgia, of course, which remains almost 20% occupied by Russian forces, have come to understand, Putin and his regime do not have the interests of the Caucasus countries at hand. And I think you've seen Armenia express their desire to distance themselves from Moscow. They still have, of course, Russian troops on a base there. You've seen Azerbaijan assert itself, President Aliyev being very clear about his views of certainly some of the Russian actions, like shooting down an Azerbaijani passenger jet, and at first trying to deny their involvement in that. So Russia, under Putin's control, will continue to try to disrupt efforts. They have a long history of liking frozen conflicts that can disrupt opportunities for peace and progress. They see that as more in their interest. But I think both Armenia and Azerbaijan have found a common ground in the fact that they realize they don't need Moscow. They've tried to, I think, be respectful of the engagement that Russians have had over the years, certainly that helped bring an end to their war in 2020. But now we see the countries having bilateral approaches, Armenia and Azerbaijan, two leaders who I think have found one of these moments in history where there are two personalities in leadership positions who can really get things done. They've developed, I believe, a level of trust with each other. This is an area and a situation that is one of great mistrust. There's very little confidence, and they have to work on building confidence through these person-to-person engagements. And that's something I always encouraged both leaders to do. The more often that they could meet together, and it didn't have to be in Washington or in Brussels or Geneva or Moscow. It could be even next door in Georgia, but certainly Abu Dhabi, where they met just last week, is close by, provides a good place for them to sit down and talk about these issues and have their teams then continue on the bilateral track, which includes issues like border demarcation, this corridor that we've talked about, and other confidence building measures so that they can hopefully in 2026 finally sign the agreement that they announced in March and really declare peace in the region. That's an opportunity for the whole South Caucasus, all three countries, to really benefit from peace, security, and the opportunity to play the role that they can as a crucial corridor between East and West for trade, for investment opportunities, infrastructure, North-South corridors, ports on the Black Sea, of course, energy and the pipelines that have been crucial to the region already for many decades.
Well, let's see if it happens this year. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has teased that the agreement may be coming. He, of course, did not specify exactly when, but how closely do you think the U.S. is involved? I understand that you're not involved on the government side, but what would be your anticipation of how closely the U.S. is involved in this?
Well, I think they remain committed and involved, and that's something that's occurred through administrations. I worked on issues in the region during the first Trump administration, then during the Biden administration, before I retired from government. And I'm pleased to see that colleagues at the State Department, including the Secretary himself, have remained engaged, and that other envoys on behalf of the President have been engaged, whether it's Mr. Witkoff, whether it's Tom Barrack, who's the President's ambassador to Turkey, but was recently named his special envoy for Syria. He has also taken an interest and commented on the importance of getting this done and how the U.S. stands ready to help and facilitate whatever might be useful for the two countries to feel comfortable and move ahead with their peace.
Yeah. I'm very happy that you brought up Turkey in a different context, but I have a question about Turkey. Turkey is, of course, a very impactful, very powerful player in the region, close ally to Azerbaijan, and does not have diplomatic relations with Armenia. But recently, we're seeing that there is a motion or movement in that direction as well, whereas Pashinyan has met with Erdogan. There is a conversation going on. Where do you think that can go? Do you think it's possible to restore diplomatic relations and open borders between Armenia and Turkey?
I do think that that's possible. It's something that was part of the mix that we talked about just a few years ago when I was involved in the process. Look, Turkey and Armenia have a long and difficult history with each other, but they're neighbors. And as I always say, you cannot change geography. Geography matters, and that's going to be a reality. To face secure borders, which can be used then to rather unite and promote economic activity, commerce, transport, prosperity, you need to establish relationships and modalities for keeping those borders secure. Ankara and Yerevan have undertaken this going back a number of years, but of course with the Azerbaijan-Armenia war that erupted again in 2020, I think Turkey stepped back. They were closely allied, of course, with Baku. But now with the two countries themselves, Armenia and Azerbaijan coming together, I think Turkey's gotten signals from Baku that they are comfortable with Turkey also moving ahead on this, because all of these leaders understand that it's important to begin to resolve these long-standing and frozen issues. So establishing formal relations was something that Turkey and Armenia agreed to in terms of going back to 2009, and we're going to open their borders, but they never did that because of strong opposition from Azerbaijan. Now with Azerbaijan's support and a serious peace process between Baku and Yerevan, Ankara has an opportunity to move forward on this as well. And you saw the visit by Prime Minister Pashinyan to Turkey, where he met with President Erdogan. That's historic, again, showing that he is a man of courage, of vision, willing to take risks, political risks, in order to move things forward. And I was very pleased to see that. It's not the first time, obviously, that they have met. They meet at international fora. And Pashinyan himself visited Turkey also in 2023 and moved forward on their agreement back in 2021 to launch efforts toward normalizing their ties, and especially to trying to get some of those border crossings open.
You mentioned something very interesting and important, how Pashinyan, more so than any other leader involved, is risking his political future. And that's an assessment that you hear very often. Can Pashinyan survive this? What's your view on that? How risky of a position is he in right now? And is he navigating this right?
Well, Pashinyan came into office with strong support, and he was reelected with strong support, even after Armenia lost the brutal war. I think that's because the people of Armenia liked his message of trying to move the country forward out of this situation it's been in. As Prime Minister Pashinyan said to me, we have a country. This is our country, and we need to focus on this. We need to have peace. We need to have security. And we need to start moving forward in terms of modernizing the economy, taking charge of our own future. And I think he has shown, again, great courage in that. They have elections in Armenia again in less than a year. June of 2026, again, parliamentary elections will be held. That's why you'll see an uptick in domestic politics. You'll see an uptick in issues, in challenges, accusations from opposition and others. You'll see interference from Russians and others. It's why I've encouraged and hope we'll see movement first and foremost on the Armenia-Azerbaijan front, because I think declaring peace and saying we have a lot more to do to have good relationships to overcome decades, if not centuries, of tension, but we are declaring that there is peace between our two countries, and we're going to focus on things that will really matter for people's lives, giving them security to then pursue prosperity, commerce, and other opportunities, including in the tech sector, where Armenia has shown some great promise. They have been trying to build their economy, but they need to have access as a landlocked country to their neighbors, to the Black Sea and its ports, and all of these things tie in together for a better future for a region that is very difficult. Let's remember that the other country in this equation that we haven't mentioned yet is Iran. And Iran's role, all eyes continue to watch what happens in Iran as well. It's a tough neighborhood, but I think they can begin to. I think they can begin to see a better future for all the people in the neighborhood by pursuing these diplomatic efforts.
I thought you were going to say one country that we have not yet mentioned is Georgia, which you mentioned it once, but how do you see Georgia's role in this? And where do you see Georgia in this sort of in this transformational processes that we're seeing in the Caucasus right now?
Yeah.
What's your view of Georgia in this context?
Well, Georgia, of course, going back to my paradigm that geography matters and that you can't change geography. History can be interpreted, history can be made. Geography is there, and these countries are going to be neighbors, and they've got to work out these issues. Georgia has historically been able to maintain good relations with both of its South Caucasus neighbors, that is, with Armenia and with Azerbaijan. And in fact, during the early days of the peace process, as the war ended, Georgia and its government played a very valuable role. I worked very closely with then Prime Minister Karabashvili to help negotiate the freeing of Armenians who were still being held prisoner by Azerbaijan. That role was crucial, and they always maintained that their good offices, their facilitation was available to both sides in that. Georgia, of course, has had challenges of its own in terms of its democracy, in terms of the protests that have been held, in terms of the direction that their current government is taking. And that is, of course, of concern to some people. Again, these three countries are going to have to work out modalities to work with each other because they're all interdependent. Turkey then plays a very big role as the largest country, obviously, there. Lots of other geopolitical factors like Ukraine and the outcome of the war there and the reconstruction of Ukraine. That, of course, is going to make this vital transit corridor through the Caucasus, from the east, from Central Asia, the resources that are there into the Black Sea for Ukraine reconstruction and for better energy flows. All of these pieces are going to be a part of it, and Georgia's going to want to pay attention to that. It has real opportunities to make its ports on the Black Sea much more lucrative. Crucial factors in moving forward, but they're going to have to maintain good relations, obviously, with both of their neighbors. And I think that's what we can hope to see step by step, that all three countries of the Southern Caucasus will benefit from a blossoming of peace and efforts to unify their economies in the sense that they all rely on each other, and the geography can become a positive for them instead of a challenge.
How significant do you think it is that Turkey is stepping up in the Caucasus?
Well, I think you're right. What we're seeing is, again, a lot of historic trends that are reemerging. The Russian-Turkish relationships, shall we say, throughout history in this region have often been represented through difficult wars, difficult relationships, efforts at promoting, and expanding empires. The countries of the South Caucasus have often paid the price for that. And I think what we would hope to see, and I think there are real opportunities here, is constructive engagement. Turkey, of course, with an enormous economy, a gateway in so many ways to the whole region, the gateway through the Bosphorus to the Black Sea, Istanbul as the major center for trade, for commerce, for cultural exchange. All of these are important roles that Turkey can play. That's why it's important for them to work out their challenges with Armenia, to continue to promote a good relationship with Azerbaijan, but recognize that Azerbaijan is a sovereign country. Of course, many people don't realize Azerbaijan was not part of the Ottoman Empire or under the Turks, even though they share a sort of Turkic commonality through language and other traditions. So it's a region, as you know, of great complexity, tremendous amount of history, a lot of animosity, not a lot of trust. But let's try to reverse that, and I think there could be a very positive history ahead. I'm encouraged by the kind of engagements we have. Pashinyan visiting Turkey, Pashinyan and Aliyev together in Abu Dhabi, discussing their issues, moving a peace process forward. I hope Georgia can try to get itself back on track to play a constructive role as they have in the past in the region, and that we can all really see a changed South Caucasus. And I think the United States would welcome that, as administrations have for a number of decades now made a role to support those countries in fulfilling their own potential.
Ambassador Reeker, thank you very much for your thoughts and your time. I really appreciate this.
It's been a pleasure, and we'll do it again.
Very good. I'll take you up on that.